All right, Deborah, welcome to the Cryptocurrency Chat podcast. So the first question I'm going to ask you before we get into your introduction is, what is your favorite sci-fi movie? Mine, before you answer yours, mine is, I like robots. So I like iRobot, Terminator. Those are like my two favorite ones. How about you?
Oh, well, I think you're going to like my answer then. God, of course I'm going blank right now. Because I love sci-fi, but I'm trying to now, my brain is trying to go through every sci-fi movie. But the Total Recall, that's it, obviously, and I
Ah,
couldn't recall it. The Total Recall.
okay.
I would say for this conversation, because it depends, it's all on context and how I'm feeling that day. But Total Recall is one of the ones I could go back and watch that over and over and over, the original, for sure.
Nice.
I wouldn't. It's definitely one of my favorites that I'll watch all the time. But there are so many others that were more impactful. But for the sake of this conversation, I'll make that my answer.
All right. So with that said, Cryptonauts, welcome back to another episode of Cryptocurrency Chat. I am your host, Blockchain John, here with my co-host, Jake Jabarelli, as well as Cryptonaut Mike. Here we have DEBRA Farber, CEO of Principal LLC. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you. It's great to be here.
All right. So before we get any further into what you're doing now, obviously we always like to have our first-time guest on the podcast to go back into what they used to do before they got into their current status, their current position now. So let's go back as far as college before you even got into law school, because obviously
Wow.
you did
Okay.
do law school. So way back, actually, let's go to high school. What did you do? Did you drive? Did you walk? Well, paint the picture for me. What did you do?
Okay. Well, let's say for most of my high school, for the last 3 years. So freshman year, I did high school like normally you get on a bus and you go to your high school. But I switched schools my sophomore year. To a in the area, it was not considered a better school, but it was to where my father was the high school principal. So I had this very unique scenario where I was driven to school by the principal. On the occasions that he was sick, I was, parking his car in his principal's parking spot. So I drove or was driven for the most part.
Hmm. Nice. Nice. And obviously you grew up, you went to college, you did all that good stuff. But let me just
Yeah.
go ahead and do your introduction here. I went ahead and printed out some paperwork. I did a little
Yeah,
research on you.
it's a few pages long, huh?
It's several pages long, but I'm just going to read a small little snippet of it if you don't mind. So here we go. For the listeners out there, this is going to benefit you a lot. Obviously, this is a podcast. There's a lot of people listening all around the globe that listen to this podcast. Visually, they get to see you for the first time, right? At least on this podcast. So here we go. Deborah J. Farber is a global privacy thought leader, advisor, consultant, and angel investor with 16 plus years of privacy and security leadership experience in the tech sector, including at Amazon, AWS, as the Rise of Privacy Tech, DID, Privacy Request, and Sibley, among many others. As a consultant, Deborah guides privacy's first tech companies on product market fit, go-to-market strategies, effectively selling to the CPO, DPO, CIS. I don't even know what these acronyms are. CISO and CDO privacy by design and default strategies, and products marketing messaging. As an angel investor, Deborah invests in disruptive business models and privacy-first technology. She recently made her first two angel investments in, how do you say that? Bloat out? Is it bloat?
Blot out.
Blot
Blot
out.
out.
Blot out.
Blot out those invasive ads.
Blot out. Okay, good. And we had JT on the podcast already. So
Great.
another one of your investments was in the Join social media platform. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to kind of go
Yeah,
around
I
circle
think
on
so.
that. All right. So with that said, there's a lot more that I'll get into a little further in the episode. So with that said, let's get into actually women's in security and privacy, WISP. I've actually never heard of this. This is the first time I've heard of
Yeah.
this. So actually, can you please just go into what that is and how did you come up with that? Because from my understanding, you co-founded this project, right?
Yes. Yes. So, gosh, I'm not sure how many years back it is now. Maybe about 7 years. Six other ladies and I, we were in privacy practitioners, which is its own separate industry from security. There's overlaps, but different workflows completely and different and within the business. Where privacy, you're working a lot more at the business process level. Security, you're looking more, various levels of the tech stack. So we decided, like, look, we were in Silicon Valley. I was living in San Francisco for 8 years before moving to the Pacific Northwest and the Portland area now. Pretty much it's a town of tech, even if you're a nurse to tech folks, right? Like so we were swept up in the excitement of innovation and all of that, but still being perceived as like privacy and security being compliance issues rather than like actual, things you should be baking into your MVP and other products you want to get out there and your entire business model. And so we wanted to really just kind of, in a very male-dominated industry like security, wanted to kind of bring together the women in the space that were thought leaders or just getting into the space, figuring out how do we navigate our career and what are the different career paths in both privacy and data protection and security. We brought that together, and like our very first, there was such a thirst for it, especially in the Bay Area. We at our very first event had 100 women show up, and we continue to have as much engagement over that time. It was entirely bootstrapped. We initially needed, to get some money to make our business run, kind of put in the idea, hey, why don't we go to DEF CON? Like literally get this bootstrap by people in the industry, each giving $10, $5, $10. We had swag, which everyone in that's all the hackers love. So, we gave out women in security and privacy swag, and in that very first attempt, we raised 10 grand in like that one conference, all from individual donations. And then like the organization really expanded from there. I'm no longer in the leadership role there. I've kind of passed that on to other leaders who are, continuing to expand WISP, Women in Security and Privacy, WISP, to, other places. I know there's like a New York chapter, and I think there's one in London or so Ireland.
It's a growing, continuous thing then, right? It didn't just die out.
Oh, yeah. It's a full-on nonprofit.
Wow. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So I thought it was pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's awesome to be part of that foundation and just see the baby grow, right? That's awesome. Hopefully that's
absolutely. And for me, and this is a trend that will come back to why Hedera, why am I doing what I'm doing now, and what gravitates to me. It's a trend. I love the ecosystem building but given my expertise, for so long, no one wanted to give privacy and security the reins. Like people it's like, your compliance. After we build things, we'll talk to you. And then, it's like, no, you got to build this into your business process. You got to build this into your strategy. You got to, and so finally, so what I really love is this kind of ecosystem building or getting people together behind, win-win ideas, right? Like, let's build the pie and make everyone more successful, right? Like that. So for me, it was like wonderful blessing to work with other women and get more women into the space, right? And get more, perspectives and into security and privacy, and then just like generally, like then within whatever organizations we're working with, really make that change internally.
I bet you the energy and the vibe just being around so many women is just so energetic that just fuels you to just do more, right? I think that would
it really does. I mean, it really does, and we've had plenty of male allies. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, some of our biggest like supporters and cheerleaders were the men in our lives and the men that we've met along the way, as well as women and gender. I include, when I say women, I also include trans women, because trans women are women in my opinion. So like, I don't want anyone to think I'm not being inclusive. I mean like literally just want more diversity, more viewpoints, because that's how if we're the torchbearers of privacy and security that are going to be in our day jobs, making the product requirements and recommendations. And if we're not building for a diverse set of people, right, we're just going to still keep, building tech that is biased and potentially dangerous. So
Deborah, you went to Brooklyn Law School, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you did the whole thing. You didn't just test it out, right? You did the whole thing. And at the end,
yeah. I graduated. I have a JD. Yes.
Yeah, you graduated. But at the end, you didn't do anything with it, right? From my understanding.
Oh, I would disagree. I have not formally practiced law, but I would say I've done a tremendous amount with my law degree.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's a good
In
point.
fact, I think more people who are trained attorneys should go into more roles of public policy and compliance and regulatory. I mean, half of the roles I've gotten have been because I have a law degree, and in many of those ways, I would be like, it's unfair because people don't need a law degree to do what I'm doing. But at the same time, I always feel like I'm trying to be put into a box when I have just many passions and interests, and this has been just a lifelong challenge, right? I'm sure many of us feel the same way. So for me, it was when I learned about privacy as a concept, like as the legal framework for it, right? Like from my professor Paul Schwartz, who literally wrote the law book along with Daniel Solove, who's at George Washington University, on privacy law. So I learned from like the guy who was like, bringing the academia together from a legal perspective. And then I go, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. To me, like I thought I wanted to do intellectual property. And then there's a lot of overlap here with, not overlap, but you could see how someone might go, oh, okay, intangible things. What are your property rights around them? And then he was my intellectual property professor. I learned copyright from him, and then I liked him so much as a professor, and I liked the what I had learned from him, and he was fun. That he really introduced concepts of privacy, which I'm like, oh, this is like the new intellectual property law, right? And I'm like, oh, well, no one's in this yet. I could kind of like make my own way. It was almost impossible for someone who's not like number 2 in their class to like get a law school intellectual property job. Like it was just everybody wanted to do it, right? Like it's like entertainment law. It sounds so intriguing. Who doesn't? So it's very hard to get those really well-paying jobs. And I'm like, privacy law, this is the future. Oh my gosh. And none of the law firms were doing this. This is back in 2005 to give people context.
Right.
I'm older than I look. So back in 2005, you had maybe, healthcare team at a law firm is going to be working on HIPAA. Right? Or you'd have like the financial services, law firms that supported fintech or financial services at the time. They were supporting like Graham Leach Bliley and, Fair Credit Reporting Acts. Like attorneys in that vertical would be working on those things, right? And then it started to get less verticalized, right? And you started getting more like, well, as we're doing more automated Web 2, transactions on the web and more engagement and all of that, right? Like it's no longer just like Web 1 world where things are just about viewing things. Right now you're interacting, and it's the rise of ad tech. And so all of that like kind of changed the game for the attorneys. But before that, it was like there were no law firms focusing on privacy as a thing. And I wanted to work on privacy. And so the company that I cut my teeth on privacy at was the American Express. I was in New York. I was living right nearby, and they basically gave me an opportunity to work on online privacy as a manager. And I was all too excited to do the work that other people just thought was annoying. And, to them, it wasn't as interesting. And so I actually reported to somebody who was not even a privacy person. He's kind of pulled over from audit to kind of understand like where was American Express using social security numbers across the organization. Like this is how specific it was. Just social security numbers. Like where are we using that so we can figure out where we don't really need to use social security number? And it turned out there was just all the places they were using it for the most part. I don't want to say all, but for the most part, it was they decided there was no other key they could use. It had to still be SSN. So like I reported to that guy who was like, yeah, I don't know how to help you. So like, do you need help from me? It's like, no, I got this. And so I'd be going, and our VP lived in Arizona. So who my director reported to. So I was going into VP meetings because there was no associated privacy VP to talk about online privacy stuff. So I was very early on getting to like in the weeds on product requirements. And I like that slowly began my journey. And then the next job I had after that was like an attempt at being a Web 2 healthcare kind of, it was Steve Case's baby called Revolution Health. And that's where I cut my teeth on, the rise of SaaS and web development and just, agile, building and just really going, okay, privacy is all going to be all about product and requirements, and I need to get knowledgeable. And then I went and I became a certified Scrum product owner because like this is what we need, like privacy knowledgeable Scrum product owners, right? So I have an interesting career, but I think we need more privacy lawyers going into non-legal.
You
field.
are that unique unicorn for sure, for sure. I looked at your history. You've worked, just for a little more I guess context on your history. American Express, IBM, Visa, Big ID, AWS, and TrustArc. Let's see, the World Economic Forum. How did that? I don't even know how that happened. How did that happen? I'm kind of curious about that.
Oh yeah. Oh, so that was when I was at Visa. I was on their public policy team.
Okay.
Oh, are we not jumping to that yet? Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, and I see you have Visa, Women's in Security and Privacy, and well, let's see, what is this? Not so secure. Okay, I never heard of them either.
Oh yeah, that's a while back. They were purchased, and yeah.
Okay, and let's see. Obviously, you worked on Amazon Web Services as well. Cool. I mean, you got what was this? Cranium, Privacy and Security. A global.
Yeah, that was for a short time that I was doing some consulting work with a Belgian-based consulting company.
Even through all of this, you even started up your own consultation services, right? After working for so many companies, you said, "I'm done. I can do this by myself," right? And you went head on, and you're doing great from what I'm looking at. A lot of people like what you're doing. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, I've done consulting. So I've done a lot of consulting. I'd say half my career. So when I was working at IBM, that was their consulting arm, their government consulting arm. When I was working at TrustArc, that was on their consulting team. I was like the number two to Ray Everett, who was in charge of the consulting team there. And Ray Everett, I bring him up because he's actually one of the first people to ever use the moniker Chief Privacy Officer. So he's, and a great friend now. And so most of my career has been in consulting. And I can tell you, I even had my own consulting firm called Farber Strategies for about 4 or 5 years while I was in San Francisco. So you listed some projects even that I did through Farber Strategies.
Okay.
And I could tell you that then it was hard because I'm one person. So you could consult and deliver work, right? But then, I had to do my own, bring in my own business. I had to go and find where the needs were. And nobody was talking about privacy. I had to explain to them why it was important. Look, you're legally obligated to do this and blah, blah, blah. Now things are easier. The market, I said, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to be a consultant for myself again without a team of people, because this is a lot of work, which I knew, but I thought it would flow a little easier than it did. Now it's different because the market cares about privacy and security. No longer is it about, oh no, I don't know, the regulators are going to notice if we don't do this or that. Let's not do it this year and see what our competitors do. Is not a viable strategy anymore.
What changed to make the consumer really focus on their privacy?
I think it's been a wave of things over the years because we've been screaming, our privacy experts have been talking about ad surveillance since the ads came out. We're behavioral ads, but what are people consenting? This doesn't feel right. And we kind of extrapolated and knew what the problems would be. It's just we were Cassandras. No one was listening to us, right? It's we're telling you what the writing's on the wall. This is a bad idea, and it was people won't. It's great. It makes it free, and everyone can have free access to everything. And it's all you have to do is be the product, right? So I think some of the changes are major fines to big tech. So one of those good example is for the EU had some major fines against Google, which resulted in Google eventually going, we're going to eliminate third-party ads, trying to make it look like it's just the right thing to do. Meanwhile, it's this has been their entire business model for years and years and years, right? So now they're trying to change that ship, and as a problem is that they're trying to figure out a way to still preserve their business model, right? I mean, so how do we make it more privacy preserving when the entire business model was invasive in many ways, right? People didn't feel like they really had control over their entire Google experience. If you thought you might have opted out over here, but it still had you opted in over there, and it just, people felt surveilled and they didn't understand all of the ad tech world that, and so I'm not picking on Google, but I think specifically Google getting rid of their their use of third-party cookies is meaning that anybody who wants to continue to serve ads in the same way needs to figure out a first-party strategy, or see what Google comes up with or other advertising industry challenges would be. Because what's happening is, by pulling those third-party cookies for use, the rest of society that has been dependent on Google search and Facebook advertising or whatnot. We saw what happened with Facebook going out for a few hours, right? Like major impacts to small mom and pop shops. And when we talk about like big tech and surveillance, we want to replace some of the problems, but we don't want the rest, the small businesses to like completely fail as a result. So I think that is change. So that, and then constant media, like the beat of the drum of just anytime there's a breach, reporting on the breach, because it's like, look, a breach happened, I'm going to report on it. But like, the breach isn't the story anymore. The fact that there's, Web 2 has challenges, and therefore in the infrastructure that results in like centralized, personal data becoming, major breaches if somebody finds a vulnerability and exploits it. It's important for people to know, but the individuals don't know how to quantify that risk. Right. So like, what do? I hear another, oh, great, now the government just got popped and I'm surely in there. Or, how consumers are consistently being told how dangerous the web is, but nobody's really telling the larger story. And I when I say nobody, I mean the media. And a lot of the reason the media doesn't do that is what academia is coming up with or what trends there are is not a story in and of itself.
I think
something has to happen in order for them to feel like it's newsworthy.
Right. I think the biggest issue is that when it comes to big tech, they're so big that I can make the comparison. This is how I envision it: is that it's like trying to do an upgrade or do a repair on a plane that is in midair in flight. Right. Correct. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it. It's the plane's already taken off. Privacy and security is already taken off. It's out there in the web. That plane is up in the air. Now, how we work on that and how we improve on that is going to be, I would say, very sensitive. Obviously, there's got to be some adjustments, some changes, some upgrades, because like you kind of hinted there, it's going to affect the global economy one way or another, depending on how we change things, right?
Yeah. For sure. And now's not the best time because everyone's coming together. It's not just privacy and security now, right? It's this feeling of lack of power and a power imbalance. And it's bringing in more, we want more transparency, right? We want ethical AI. We want ethical tech. We're talking ESG. We're talking, how do we make the world better and people getting, everyday people getting the benefits of the tech society we're building, as opposed to a few of the haves and then like a lot of the people who feel just dependent on big tech, right? So it's an exciting time.
We're using two words, but they mean two different things: security and privacy, right? Security and privacy, right? People don't really quite understand that there is a big difference in that. Can you take some time and just explain the differences between security and privacy? Yes. Please, thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to get a little academic here because I think it helps actually, explain it a little better. So in the security industry, anything that has to do with security maps to one of three, major goals, right? CIA. So either confidentiality, keeping things confidential, integrity, and availability. So you want with integrity, you want the data to be accurate. You want it to be, you want assurances around the data that it's correct and the right data and all that. And then availability, right? It needs to be available. The uptime, if it's highly secure but you can't get access to the data, it's not usable, right? So CIA. And we often talk about security in terms of controls, like what controls are you deploying for your security? And we're usually talking about networks or systems. So with security, we want to know, are things locked down on a network? Right? These are kinds of how we think of them, and we think of networks and systems. With privacy, the idea, it's like, first of all, well, what kind of privacy are we talking about, right? We're talking about transactional privacy, where people in crypto are always, that's their whole worldview of the privacy conversation unfortunately, is in transaction privacy. So if they address that concept, they all of a sudden don't want to talk about it. It's almost like the rest of privacy doesn't matter to them. But anyway, behavioral privacy. Am I going to change my behavior based on how I know I'm being watched, or, just general surveillance? Or so so the way I describe privacy in my point of view, because there's so many different definitions, is the following. I believe privacy is not the same as anonymity. In fact, they're like completely different things. Privacy is about being, in my opinion, being known. Like, this is DEBRA FARBER, right? Mm-hmm. But she gets to decide, I get to decide what attributes about myself I want to disclose under what circumstances based on a context, right? And so that context is so important. That's why we always talk about purpose and use for information, because context matters all the time with privacy. And so there's all these other things you could talk about. Is privacy, like, is it your own IP rights basically over certain aspects about yourself? Should you have ownership? There's questions about, should you have control? I think, yes, you should have control over your own data. I'm not, there's a lot of conversations around academically and philosophically about what privacy should be. But I think for this conversation, that's probably, a good synopsis. I would say that within a business, privacy operates differently because based on that context, I'm looking at business processes that involve personal data. And so personal data is huge. It's not just identifiers. It's literally any data that's linked to an identity. So metadata, everything about me that a company collects that's tied to an identifier of DEBRA FARBER is also considered personal data. So it's a massive amount of data you need to protect. And what does protect mean? Protect means a lot of things. It doesn't just mean make the data safe, right? It means making sure a company understands what potential privacy outcome problems could result if they don't take certain measures. And so the problem with internally with company, I mean, there's a lot of internal problems, but a lot of times the people who are stewards of this data aren't security. So people can protect a system without protecting the right assets in that system, right? I mean, you have to be aligned. And so that's why we often say privacy and security are opposite sides of the same coin, because you absolutely need security. It's one of the requirements of privacy. You need security to enforce the privacy rules. And so there is no privacy without security. However, you could have a completely secure system without any need for privacy, because it might not have any personal data in there at all. It might just be, I don't know, your IP.
Here's something that came to mind, DEBRA. So I live in California. So there's this thing that came out, was it this year or last year, that just all of a sudden popped up on my screen. It's a new California law that allows anyone that's using the internet in California to opt out of third-party cookies, right? My question to you is, did you have any
opt out of the sale of your data to third parties?
Right. Did you have any influence or any involvement in that?
Oh, did I? Oh, no. I did not have any. I know a lot about the California Consumer Protection Act. It has an interesting history that I think is probably too long of a story to tell right now. But okay, I'll at the high level, it really comes down to like a really rich, like a multimillionaire decided he just wanted a law. And so he teamed up with Ashkan Soltani, who is now the newly appointed regulator for this law in California. And some others, they teamed up and they crafted their own law. California, as you know, has this really weird system for voting where you can put stuff on a ballot, and anything that is voted in on that ballot cannot be edited, or like, I'm not using the right language right now, but you cannot, the legislature, the California legislature does not have authority to edit that law, because the idea is, oh no, the consumers spoke. Not consumers, but the population of California spoke, and they voted this law in, and so it was called the California Consumer Protection Act, right? So who's not going to vote for that, right? So the challenge was that it was written in a way that was very difficult for business to comply with. Now, I want to change businesses too, but you want something that's like achievable, right? Like, and there were certain aspects like, look, there's no way right now with cookies to understand, like, is the sale of my data for purposes of serving me an ad, is that a sale? If I'm served an ad, is that a sale? to Google. You know what I mean? We don't know. We don't know. So what happens? So the whole advertising industry is like, or anyone who dealt with ads in any business was like, we don't know how to comply with this. Like, how would I be able to, in this millisecond of an ad being served, be able to like share with you, for instance, if you ask, hey, because you now have a right in California to say, I want to know everything that Google collects about me or Amazon collects about me or any company really, right? I mean, there's some criteria on what companies are covered under it. I won't get into that now. You can go look that up. But it's a whole hell of a lot of companies. And you could go and ask them, and they have to give this information to you. Well, they can't just wake up one day and give it to you. They have to have business processes that find the information, discover it, put it all together, because this was not initial requirements. So the law had a lot of flaws. I mean, it even had spelling mistakes and redundancies that needed to, like, it was written in 5 days. Oh, wow. No. So what happened is, sorry. So it didn't pass. So what happened is, I'm doing a shitty job. Sorry, I'm doing a bad job. Okay. What happened, because this is so fascinating to me, is that it was almost a threat. Like, this is going to get passed. They got all the signatures. It was going to be on the ballot, and we all going to pass, right? Because what consumer is going to vote against having more privacy? They don't have no layperson's going to have enough nuance and understanding of the broader field of privacy and data protection to be able to understand what's missing or what's the broader picture. And so, if it couldn't be amended after it was passed, we're like, that's awful. That's bad. No business wanted that. And so what happened is the California legislature in 5 days ended up taking a lot of that proposed legislation, changing it in some areas, kind of negotiating in this like almost hostage situation, it felt like. And then they go and they passed it in 5 days. And so but at least it was amendable, right? Mm-hmm. We know it has flaws. We know there's problems. We know we're going to have to even update for spelling mistakes. And like, this isn't, certain parts didn't even make sense. So at least they were able to update it. And they have since. They've even, they have since updated it and even made it stronger in some areas. So that's the story of the California Consumer Privacy Act, which is, but it is a big driver of change. And we have privacy experts have a love-hate relationship with it because the federal government Congress can't seem to get its act together to make a law for privacy right now, a federal law that's similar to the GDPR in the EU. And the EU is the one that's set the privacy floor on the baseline of what you must have in order to have privacy and data protection. But the EU doesn't call it privacy because privacy to them is enshrined in their, human rights. They already consider privacy a human right. We don't have that we have it at the state level in California. We don't have that except as interpreted under some certain like privacy from government situations, right? But we don't have it in the same way for non-government privacy issues. And it, as a result, it's actually slowing down and causing more friction and more compliance issues with cross-border trade globally because we don't have we are not considered a country that has adequate privacy laws. As such, we are not considered adequate, and that's why it's this compliance mess that most companies have to deal with. And there's a lot there that I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, so I won't do that.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
I want to transition over to artificial intelligence. I want to pick your brain.
Okay.
I want to pick your brain on that a little bit because I was actually over the weekend. I was watching this documentary on artificial intelligence, and correct me if this stuff is bizarre, because I know sometimes documentaries go a little off the boat, but it's in regards to the warfare, the digital warfare that's going on with the United States and China when it comes to data mining consumers' information, right? And what these two nations are doing are basically trying to advance their artificial intelligence to a level that is so instant that it'll recognize you instantly. Obviously, that's already going on now. If you post,
are you talking facial recognition?
Facial recognition is one. That's still it's data scraping, right? If you walk around, here in Silicon Valley, we have Nightscope robots that roam around the city. That stuff has artificial intelligence.
Wow, I left like 2 years ago, so a lot's changed.
What?
You won't see
these
them
robots?
just like they're called Nightscopes. They're literally robots that roam around. Obviously, they're contracted by certain private properties Like I know Kaiser Permanente had it for a while. I don't know if they still have it. I haven't been out there for a while, but it was pretty cool to see this robot. This extra large R2D2 look. It almost looks like an R2D2, just an extra large, taller version of it, just roaming around the parking lot. And that thing is very affordable when it comes to doing a comparison to manpower. Obviously, robots are a lot more affordable, right? It can obviously track license plate instantly. It can do facial recognition. And it does have the built-in sensors to detect certain types of chemicals, which can be considered like explosives or drugs or, narcotics, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But obviously the scary part is that there's data tracking in there, right? There's obviously surveillance around. Same thing with my computer. Right. I'm walking on my cell phone. Cell phone, that's the biggest one. I want you to get into that right there is the cell phone. That's data tracking all the time, regardless if you turn it on or off. If you have it turned off, you're not doing anything. If you have no apps on it, you're still being data tracked. The moment you sign up with your cell phone, you're being data tracked all the time, right? You're geo-tracked all the time. That's insane. And there's no such thing as a phone that doesn't data track you at all. It's non-existent.
Yeah. Right. So what's your question? Is the question one of my thoughts?
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, that should raise alarm bells. And so, okay. If I were working for that company that is making those robots, I would say, this is scary. This is what they call uncanny valley, where it's that creepy feeling, right? Like, is this going to be a robot overlord? Like, what capabilities does it have that I'm just assuming because I don't know? Is it going to use lasers now to shock me if I do something? Like, right? So people could start putting their own fears onto a thing they don't understand because they don't understand it. And so therefore, I mean, this is why you absolutely need a threat model for privacy because as I mentioned, context is important. The context in which you see this robot, in which you see it doing its things, are you going to change your behavior based on that? Is that a good thing? Whose behavior are you going to change? Who are the threat actors you're trying to prevent? Who are the innocent bystanders you don't want to accidentally, surveil? If you're collecting lots and lots and lots of data, because for so long we were in a big data world, I'm hoping that it just kind of slightly changes, that people aren't only just trying to take in as much data as they can just to figure out a use for it later, but are more pointed and methodological in kind of the ethical reasons that they're using data and purposes. And so this is why so much of privacy and data protection law requires accountability, requires attestations that this data was never accessed by anyone. Yeah, this was tracked by the system, but like no one's able to even ever go in there unless first they put in their warrant information from law enforcement or, there was a legal order or whatever, and you have to highly document that. And hey, what's the blockchain great for these days? Well, assurances. This is why I'm so excited about DLT, because I truly believe it is providing the privacy infrastructure of Web3. I think as we move towards Web3, yes, we are putting things on chain and there is still pseudonymous and it's not anonymous, but that's fine. We're doing that today. What it's going to enable is accountability, real-time audits, instant compliance or lack of compliance understanding. These are things that boards can understand. These are triggers that boards are going to want to make sure that when you're looking under the hood and there's that there's instant compliance there, because you can't just hide your lack of compliance anymore. And when I say compliance, I hate the word. I try to avoid it as much as possible. It should be strategic, the ethical right things that you do. If we only treat ethical norms as compliance, then it's not strategic. It's just going to be check the box, and you're literally doing the least possible. And that's what your company is going to represent in the end, right? I mean, we look at Facebook right now, and no matter, they truly believe, Zuckerberg truly seems to believe that he's doing all the right things because he can't see how everyone's reacting. And he's like, but we're doing what you say. And it's like, no, we've jumped light years ahead of your business model. Like, half of what your business model is not working for people anymore, and they're stuck on it. And so, there are people who are not necessarily viewing the tea leaves right now in the same way. Some people, they're in their own bubbles, and others, I mean, like myself, I'm in like so many bubbles that I'm able to kind of connect some more dots in a non-conspiratorial way. Yeah.
Data scraping being the new current digital gold, right? Can you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, what do you mean by data scraping?
Basically collecting people's data.
So when I think of scraping, I think collecting people's data off a public website somewhere that they didn't necessarily consent to, you don't have an individual relationship with them. Like, that's what I think of when I hear scraping. So that's why I want to understand what you mean by it. Because collecting data is collecting data, but scraping to me implies that someone didn't necessarily give consent. Not that they always have to, but, you know.
Okay, data collecting then. Let's go. Data collecting.
Okay. I would agree that that data is the biggest asset for companies today. Not just because data then turns into information and can get out of that information. Huge. So yes.
One of the biggest things that I've recently discovered, recently, I'm talking about like just a few weeks ago, is that you know, when folks within the company I work for got their vaccines, that stuff is supposed to be confidential, right? Within the companies that are making those injections, and it's supposed to say confidential according to HIPAA law, correct? But
I mean, generally yes, but I'm trying to understand the actor here. Are you talking about like who is the one giving the information? Because like the HIPAA laws only apply to covered entities and business associates of those covered entities. So I want to understand.
Okay, so what I've recently discovered is that pretty much all this information is out and readily available to the public. Now, isn't that considered some type of medical record? That's what I'm trying to make that comparison to.
Right. So, you know, I think it's going to be different depending on how each company enabled the vaccines. So like, if a company was like, we're giving you vaccines on site, anyone who wants them, or you're going to have whatever they, you know, and they're collecting it right there. And they're like, who wants to sign up? Like, then you kind of know who has a vaccine and who didn't. What is the flow here?
Here's the thing. So basically right now in California, I don't know about other states, but in California, there's this big issue going on with anybody that's an employee within, at least in the Bay Area. If you're an employee here in the Bay Area and you don't have both your vaccines, you are pretty much going to burn your bridge with that company. You will not be allowed to work for that company because you're not vaccinated. Now, the individual doesn't have to technically tell the truth. They can just falsify their documents and yes, I have my vaccines, and never show any proof because that's technically considered confidential. But with a little online search, that stuff is publicly available. Now, that's my concern right there, is that when it comes to privacy, how is that being kept confidential? Or I'm kind of confused about that.
Yeah, and I can see why you're confused. I think we have to remember that we don't have an absolute right to literally anything. Every right we have has situations that can be superseded by a greater right, which is, you know, public safety, public health, I'm just even thinking like, you know, there's a major storm and your boat ends up getting like, you know, you steal someone's boat so that you can go help save someone else. Like, you legally can do that because saving someone else is more important than the property right of the boat, right? I know maybe it wasn't a great example, but the point here is that like there are situations for public health that I believe you can make certain things known for, you know, because it's intended for the safety. And so when these things get analyzed and scrutinized under you know, in litigation, there are tests to determine these things for, you know, basic scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, strict scrutiny. Those are the three categories. And like, there's different rights. Like, when is it okay to? So what I would say here is that in this case, people may feel upset about this information being known. There are certain situations where it is totally okay to do in communities because it's meant, you know, as a public health and security and safety initiative, and it's most important to help as many people be safe as possible. Is the theory.
Love that response. That was great. Way more than I expected. I mean, that's why I have you on. This is great. All right.
Yeah, I'm glad it's what you wanted.
Jake, Mike, do you guys have questions before we move on to Principled LLC? That's going to be the next topic there.
right?
We're going to talk about Hedera Hashgraph before that?
No, let's do a question real quick, if you guys don't mind. Go ahead. And I'll be right back. One of you guys, go ahead.
Actually, I'm actually quite surprised at the level of knowledgeability that I shouldn't be surprised, really. Deborah is very well versed in this. As you say, you pretty much spearheaded the concept of privacy within the industry in general, and that prior to your delving into it really wasn't a thing. I've learned
yes,
a lot
but there's
more
so
than
many
I thought I would
others
learn.
too.
I kind of want to lead into Hedera and your own company, your principled company.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have a couple of questions, although you kind of answered them, actually, interestingly enough. I appreciate your verbosity in that you are not just interested, but thoroughly versed and thoroughly comprehensive, it seems, almost. I mean, obviously you don't have an answer to every single thing. It's impossible to have an answer to everything. But the thing that I was thinking about, I had a couple of questions I wrote down while you were speaking. What was the major factor? I'm trying to think of how this ties into crypto, but it certainly does. When you mentioned that for crypto, privacy is transactional, but what do you think is the major?
The conversation has been around transactional privacy.
Yes.
It should be broad. Yeah.
What do you think is the major factor that led the market to recognize the need for privacy?
Just the lack of trust, really. It's been like over a decade of a lack of trust and just slowly feeling like less and less. I mean, I honestly think, well, crypto is a huge driver too, right? Let's be honest, because again, it's a matter of people feel like powerless, right? And there's a great book. I have not read it yet, but I've seen excerpts and stuff called "Privacy is Power," and I've heard great things about that book. But it's just another aspect of power that people feel powerless with big tech, the same way that people feel powerless against whether it's the banks or I'm not a Bitcoin maxi or anyone like that's not my world, right? I care about the utility more and I'm like it's geek when it comes to this, but I do believe that the rise of crypto and that whole belief system helped to move forward the narrative of privacy and why we need it and why we should be demanding it, and is being heard, right? And we're finally being heard on some level, and it's death by 1,000 cuts, but we're making the change. It's happening. It's like it's happening. We're seeing it. I mean, I know you guys are seeing it too, right? You have a whole media company around this space. So, but I do think that that's part of the catalyst is the feeling of lack of power. And if we don't stand up now and reclaim it, then it's just going to get worse and totalitarian and maybe more globally.
I completely agree. Yeah. I'm glad that we're on the same page with that.
Excellent. I have opposing views to a lot of people. So lately I'm like, I don't know. Post that. I don't want to be picked on by half a crypto.
You're good. Go ahead.
Sorry. No. You let's move on. We're
okay, that's fine. I was going to ask about.
I got a quick question on data and privacy. Deborah, are there any platforms or systems out there you see that allow the users to collect their own data so that they can take it to a marketplace and sell it?
Yeah, to collect their own data. I'm seeing platforms that are creating a place that you could upload your anonymized data and buy anonymized data that's been collected by an intermediary, actually. So they render it anonymous and then put it on things like Ocean Protocol. I looked at that. That's interesting. Ocean Protocol is a deal. It's a Web3 based, protocol that is allowing you to buy anonymized data sources for purposes of doing analytics.
And that's on Hedera, correct?
And so I'm sorry?
That's on Hedera, correct?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't know. I don't think it's a Hedera. I think it's its own protocol. It's based in the EU, and since you can't buy it in the US, I haven't seen it on the exchanges I'm on, at least, that I just researched less into it. But I'm an advisor, and we'll talk about to 8, soon to be 9 privacy tech and ethical tech companies. It's kind of my weird business model, and it's working for me, and I love it. So I don't know, I'm just an advisor, and I get equity for in exchange for my sweat. Sweat equity. I give, so I'm not getting anything up front, and it aligns us really well. Where it's like, if this company wins, then I win, and we all win-win. So in doing that, the only company that is B2C, because I'm a B2B woman, like that's the space I've lived in. That's the value of my relationships that I can help with, right? I'm not like a B2C person as much. But I am an advisor to a company called Rita Personal Data, and what they do, and they are talking with Hedera right now, and we're shepherding them over as they're still building. But they are building out, they already have like over 25,000 downloads of their app, where you can take control over your data they call them like a user agent, right? You say, I don't want this company, and it automates your data subject access requests. So when you ask a company in the EU or California or any of these locations that have data protection rights that you can claim, and they legally have to respond to your requests, right? And so there are a bunch of companies like Rita that are like, great, we will be the consumer advocate here and kind of custodian. And so make your requests for data deletion through our system. We'll automate that for you. You could what, and allows you to see and have the transparency of what data is being collected about you, where they can, where they have that transparency, they bring it into the app. And so they are coming at it from a consumer perspective, and what they want to do is then make it so that you can compensate users for, engaging with brands in different ways via consent, so Join social media, which is built on Hedera, has an aspect of that as well. I'm seeing lots and lots of companies doing this in different ways. And so the way you present it, I have not seen, where it's a company collecting it, so like with your own locker almost of your own personal data that you can then help you sell it either anonymously or not. I haven't seen that, but I'm seeing a play on how do we anonymize data sets or get consent directly from an individual with a brand. And I'm going to say you're going to see a rise of so many of those companies. You've got Yamgo on Hedera that's working in that space as well. So we're going to see a lot more of that. Like, let's try to bring the consumer into the economics of the data sale of their personal data. The other thing is just anonymized data, and you don't need consent. It's no longer tied to an individual. There's nobody that can be harmed, right? If it's anonymized. Problem with that is that you can't make tokenization work if it's anonymous. It has to tie back to something. And so this is why you see things like on Hedera with like Acor and their rights hash service. And they're able to, oh gosh, now I lost my train of thought. What was it I just said that made me go to Acor? I just think the world of them.
You were talking about the you just said it.
I know.
I was thinking about them. The privacy.
Oh yeah. So tokenization. So they have taken. You could tokenize anything, right? As we say, you could tokenize consent. You could tokenize your rights in some way. And so rights hash is Acor's product that allows you to basically like on HCS, not in the HTS, but like tokenize, but store it locally. You're not transferring this token across a value across accounts. This will stay within the Acor's systems, and no one will ever see the data in Acor's systems outside of their systems. But it allows you to then put an identifier, a hash, right, on the actual hash graph, that anyone who's viewing the hash graph has literally no way to tie that back to an individual, right? So it's anonymous to anyone viewing it, but it's technically pseudonymous data that ties back to an individual that Acor legally needs to protect. Now, they've thought about this. It's not like this is a big effort. If anything, this is simplifying the efforts. And what Jim is doing over there is helping to abstract out the privacy challenges so that it's going to serve as some more like middleware for downstream applications to pull from, so that this way it's abstracted out and they get the information that they need without actually having to look directly at the data.
All right, thank you. Regarding Hedera Hashgraph, obviously you're now or have been correct me if I'm wrong in regards to your title. It is you are a contracted advisor to the Hedera Hashgraph board.
No. So I'm an advisor to a bunch of startups. And the right now, and like I said, for cash flow wise, those I take equity, but that is, and then with Hedera, I'm a paid consultant. And with them, my role is privacy strategist. But I'm just to make that clear, I am not working only on products to build privacy into it by design. That's a huge effort that I do generally as privacy by design and privacy engineering and bringing those concepts to people, educating on those concepts. But that is not what I'm doing with Hedera. They already have so much of the right things in place. What I'm doing is I see the privacy play, and I don't see people out there talking enough about how distributed ledgers are what's going to enable a privacy protective, more assured, more trusted world. And there's so much around data protection, and it's complicated and thorny and different based on jurisdictions, that I wanted to be able to tell the story. And so I wrote a white paper. It is done, and I'm hoping it comes out tomorrow. It could be early on Monday, maybe Monday. But it's basically, it tells the story of like why DLT is the privacy architecture of Web3. But it's really in three parts. It's a crash course on data protection rights globally, removed all the legalese, but still left the parts you need to know. And then then I discuss like the privacy characteristics of Hedera, of HTS, of an account, of HTS and HCS. And then I give some architectural guidance on, for some of the privacy problems, like how do you delete data when it's immutable and you need to by law, things along those lines.
Where can I find this white paper?
Yes, it has not actually been published yet. It's literally, I'm waiting for Christian Hasker to give it a final approval. So that's literally, and then have a few minor edits just made. So it literally may come out to
nice. Another person we've had on the podcast in the past. That's great. Awesome. Yeah.
So that's who I've been working with, the marketing team. So I'm doing external thought leadership, like conversations like this, and speaking at conferences, and I'm writing a few more blog posts you'll see coming next on like anonymity.
Where can we find this article at, this white paper? Where can I go once it's published? Can I go to your Twitter?
Oh, it'll be on the Hedera website.
The Hedera website.
Yeah, so, I am their privacy strategist. The contractual relationship is just to let you know I'm not a full-time employee. I work 10 hours a week. But it feels like more because of the ecosystem building I'm just naturally doing. But so yeah, it's a part-time role. I love the team, and we'll see. We'll see. I don't know where I'm best in the Hedera ecosystem as it's growing. I don't know. Maybe it's better if I do some work at the HBAR Foundation, or maybe there's a particular company that I can dive deeper on. But I'm like a Hedera fan forever. So
nice. I like it.
Yeah.
What was the next question? Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. Do you code? Are you coding for Hedera?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I'm not a developer. I have no interest. My fiance,
but you do have
he's a hacker developer.
You do have some of the experience. You do tinker with code, right?
I don't tinker with code. What I do, I consider myself a technologist. So long I'm like, oh, but I'm not a technologist, but I'm not an engineer, but I'm not and it's like I've finally gotten to the point. It's like I'm freaking technical as hell. I just don't code, and so I just think that the difference is that I call it. I'm not an applied technologist.
High five.
I'm the
same way. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. I agree. These guys, they know how to code. Not me.
Yeah.
I'm the same way.
I know how to talk about technical systems and what they're doing, because that's the part that fascinates me. The writing of the code is, I hear I'm going to like it. It's like, I just don't want to sit down and do it. I don't know. It's not where my passion is. Many passions that I want to make sure that I'm actually following them.
So in regards to Hedera Hashgraph, how did you get networked into Hedera Hashgraph? How did that all happen?
Yeah, so it's Twitter, honestly. How that happened was I went on a complete rant about Clubhouse. When that Clubhouse, the app, came out on the scene, about how not only did the team not think about privacy, security, perhaps moderation, but accessibility, any of those things,
Android
and thought they had
users.
an MVP they could put out in the world, globally, was just a bad decision given the laws and whatever. And then I saw what really angered me was when I saw Andreessen Horowitz throw $100 million at an idea that's not even a full product that can meet regulatory MVP, and then just like ignore all the privacy and security folks on public. Like, they're like, oh, come to Clubhouse to talk about this. It's like, no, then I have to go on your invasive service to validate that it's okay to have the conversation. So I got really loud about this. This is like after a year of the pandemic, and I had crappy things go on for me as well as the rest of everybody else did, including my canceled wedding. Postponed. 1 week prior, they like locked down the whole country. So I was just kind of like no filter anymore, right? I didn't feel heard in the job I was at. I kind of just called out the entire security and privacy profession, and even said, I think some of you are privacy and security influencer lemmings, right? So anyway, I get really, really loud about it, and what I didn't expect was not only a pile-on of people going, thank you, right? But was for founders to reach out and go, thank you. I've heard the call that we need privacy by design, method, privacy engineering, in order to, shift left and do all these things. And we're building this and we're working on this and we're watching our peers and people who've come before us as, our heroes go onto these platforms and literally invalidate that message that we need privacy by design, privacy engineering. So JT reached out to me from Join Social Media. That's how I met JT. He reached out and goes, we need minds like you working on this thing. I had a conversation with him. He told me about Hedera, all like excited about that. And I'm like, I don't know, this a lot of excitement here. So let me take a look at it. And I don't want to say drink the Kool-Aid. There's implications there, but I tried to find flaws with Hedera, and I just can't. I can't. Okay. I honestly am just obsessed with the whole way it's been built, the way that the 100-year long-term, the ethical aspect, the leaning in the regulation instead of leaning away.
I'm kind of curious. Did you hear about Hedera first and look into Hedera first, or did you already know about blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum prior to hearing about
Hedera? So that's a great question. When I was at Visa.
Go ahead.
What's that?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, when did you first hear about blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum?
So about 5 years ago, when I was at Visa.
Okay.
So when I was at Visa, I was on their public policy team, which ironically I did very little privacy those 2 years. I did a lot more security, cybercrime. It was public policy issues, but privacy wasn't as big as it was kind of like sold to me as, which is fine because I really loved it. Work on cybercrime. I got to go to the World Economic Forum and be on one of the working groups. It was security for boards and stuff. It was really, really fun. But so the venture partner for Visa, I met with him because I'm like, are there any public policy issues I need to support your team with, right? Like, he was kind of part of the overall security organization, I think, or maybe like closely adjacent to it. But I want to see, is there anything I could be helpful because it's part of my portfolio? And the conversation we had at the time was like, okay, we're looking at it. Blockchain may disintermediate us. Like Visa's, MasterCard, like what, the current brand processors. And so we're watching closely to see how this will shape up. Very early on, the conversation, it's progress, right? And if blockchain is going to bring progress, like Visa can't sit there and like fight against progress. It's just not building the pie for everyone. And it's not a good look, right? It's just going to instill hatred. So they were like, no, so they joined a particular, I don't remember what it was called, but they joined a DLT board. I don't remember which one, specifically so they can, get inside info on like, how's it shaping up? Like, what is this space shaping up to? And the feedback I got at the time was, it's just too nascent, like maybe a little in the future, but it's just too nascent to like, there's like no public policy issues right now. There wasn't any work for me to do. And so to me, it's like, I just kept hearing about Bitcoin and quite frankly, I didn't quite get it and I didn't care enough about it. So I just like, let that sit. I did not start my very first cryptocurrency I ever bought was was HBAR. It's the whole reason I got into like not investing, speculating. But that is not the thing I love the most. I love the most the tech and the utility and like all of the problems that I think it can solve, giving it high throughput and just speed and new markets that can be created, still like in a privacy preserving, secure way. My mission now personally is to get people to realize that the infrastructure itself is not enough. You need to use it appropriately. And this is where we failed with the Web 2 world, right? Privacy and security were not baked in. And I like want to just preach that like privacy by design, privacy engineering up front now, because infrastructure obviously is going to be like the base level of what can be built on top. And so the white paper will be, that'll be out soon. And on Hedera's, you'll see it messaged everywhere where they put out news, but it'll be on their website.
You're going to be named as the crypto history books. Your title is going to be the privacy queen. That's going to be your title right there, privacy queen. You're going to have that forever.
You're very kind. I'm just glad to be part of the ride because it's fulfilling for me. I actually feel heard. And I felt in the past where it's like, this is what's going to happen if we don't do this. And like, it sounds now like, how do we build it right? And everyone's a collaborator. It's so great. Like I have met so many people just talking about the ethics of building the metaverse now. And I've got just all on LinkedIn, right? And we're just finding each other in online spaces of wherever we're at. And all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, you're already talking to a lawyer in Florida who is like, wants to be the next like NFT, HBAR like expert to, the lawyer to everybody in that space. Like there are people diving into this and are just so excited about it. And there's so much room for like literally everyone. And there's so much to build that it's exciting, which is why I really don't like this whole like which crypto's best and there's no need for that.
Here's a question I want to ask you. I know. Well, did you guys have a question? I thought I heard something.
Nope.
No. Okay. The question for you, Deborah, is you're very confident in the way you speak. Very confident. You're probably one of the most confident guest speakers we've had on the podcast.
No, thanks.
Is that something that you naturally have? And not only, there's a second part to that. I also want you to be able to speak to the women out there that want to be able to follow your footsteps and do what you do with confidence. How can you speak out to women out there? We don't have enough women in this field that can actually publicly represent themselves the way you do.
Yeah, well, I definitely am not speaking on behalf of all women, but I'm very confident about what I know. And I have so much imposter syndrome. It is way easier for me talking to like 4 panels right here and talk about myself. I mean, you're asking me about myself. I know, what do I know better than myself? Nothing. But privacy and security is like a freaking passion of mine. It's what I've dedicated my career to. And in some ways I've even been like, am I attaching too much of my identity to my work? And then realize that it's not so much privacy and security, it's ethics, it's justice, it's doing the right thing. It's broader than that. And I've just kind of found my way through privacy specifically as like my way in. No, I actually really feel like this is my sweet spot. This is what I know. If you started, if I were on a panel though at like a giant crypto conference and most people there, I mean, they don't know that I'm a privacy expert. They just like look at everyone crypto, right? And there's certain conversations that people talk about all the time. And it's like, I don't know so much about, like, I know not very, very little about Ethereum's ecosystem because I'm so into Hedera's ecosystem. I had to learn enough to be able to distinguish between the two, which I can. But then, I don't know anything about side chains and over chains and under chain. I don't know. I'm making stuff up now. But like, there is so much I don't know that I'm afraid at all times that someone's going to ask me a question about, on Twitter, for instance, just like, you don't see the person behind the screen. You're not having a conversation like this. And I don't want someone to like shit on me, right? Like and so I have so many insecurities, but I think this is more of over time, I've learned to be able to speak about what I know, but meet people where they're at. And I think that's the difference, for me at least, is in the past it'd be like, I want everyone to know about privacy, but like that, maybe that's not what you wanted to know, or for your head, or you wanted to know another aspect. Like you just wanted to talk about anonymity, but not at all about like, I don't know, surveillance, like whatever. Like, everyone comes to the privacy conversation with different biases, pre-existing notions. And so I really like just meeting people where they're at, because when I do that, you're going to ask me, and the way you frame your question tells me, it's a real hint as to how you want it answered or what you think the topic is about. And so that allows me to then instantly know where you're at so that I can add to it or give you something that I think you might find more interesting or broader, or maybe I'd get more specific. I get most concerned where I'm like, I don't even know what this audience is expecting. I don't know what their level of understanding is.
The audience wants to know if you know what the algorithm is behind Shiba Coin and Dogecoin. Go ahead.
God, no. But I have the cutest dog ever. If you want to turn him into a meme coin, I have.
Nice. Principled LLC. That is your bread and butter, right?
I mean, so it is the company I run now. And when I needed a contractual vehicle in order to do the business that I do today, which is both working with Hedera as a contractor. I literally incorporated it for the purpose of having, being able to flow the contract through. And in thinking about the name, I told you at the very beginning, because you asked me, my father was my high school principal, and I learned so much about networking and running a business from watching him run the school that I was a participant in. And he's passed over 15 years now, but it was so important to me. So naming it Principled was really, has double meaning, right? So I want principled stances on ethical tech. But what I'm doing with the company is more, to flow the contract through so I can do that work, but also for my advisory roles, right? So I'm building, I'm not sure how big I want to make this or how many startups I feel like I can work with at once without it being too much. But right now I'm at 8, and will soon be 9. And it has been a joy.
So you are the principal.
What's that?
You are the principal, huh?
I'm a principal with a I instead of an A at the end, right?
Okay, nice. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. Are you looking for more clients? Do clients come to you? Are you out there scouting? Because I know it's very obvious that privacy is your thing, and you want everybody to know. You want everybody to know what privacy is all about. Obviously, there's so many different layers of privacy. Are you scouting around to try to spread this message? Because you're pretty much you're being an evangelist in privacy, right? Are you going to these companies and saying, hey, I want to be able to provide services to you? Or are you currently kind of already saturated with Hedera services and what you're doing there?
Right. It's a great question. And then the quick answer is I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out, I don't accept things that just come to me. Like, here's a great opportunity. But, there's also so much in the ecosystem that's being built right now that I don't want to, have too many things on my plate that I can't accept opportunity, right? And I have enough right now that's keeping me happy and busy, and quite honestly, it's been almost like a little bit of a sabbatical, drinking from like multiple fire hoses, trying to learn and understand the tech, but also as it's in motion and things are constantly changing, and understand the dynamics and the crypto, because I'm in all the communities too, like on Reddit and Facebook and Discord here, right? So, and just understanding the different cultures and like the cultural ideologies, I should say, that people bring to the discussions. And so I'm not sure, I'm still kind of like a mix of a sabbatical in here. Didn't want to be working full time for like a good 6 months, but kind of am anyway. So I think what it is like, I'm a collaborator. So if somebody has a great opportunity and, they reach out, most likely take that call if it makes sense to do so. I've also, one of my advisory roles is for the rise of privacy tech, which in and of itself is a bunch of, it's my tribe. It's my, the founder is one of my closest friends, Lourdes Terecha, and all the advisors include my my own hero, Michelle Dennedy. She was the chief privacy officer of Cisco and McAfee and Sun Microsystems. I mean, she is one of those who've come before me and who I like really modeled my career based on, was like Michelle Dennedy. She's also an advisor to the Rise of Tech, and we are on constant communication with one another. Like literally, it's my daily. They're who I vent to. These are my people. And so through that, though, I kind of went a little too much on a love fest there, but
that's okay.
Through that, the Rise of Privacy Tech brings together privacy experts, like advisors, like myself, privacy founders and innovators, and who maybe come from outside the ecosystem, or maybe they like worked on a particular problem but aren't like embedded into the privacy ecosystem, or knowing all the right people or organizations to get involved with or whatever, right? And then the investors, right? So that didn't exist anywhere else for privacy. Plenty for security, and even the security VCs, I can tell you because I'm meeting with a lot of them as well, is that they're not. The security VCs are like, they pick their winners and then they think, oh, this is how they're defining privacy tech. And so the Rise of Privacy Tech is defining privacy tech for the industry. We're about to come out with the white paper for that, I think later this month, maybe November. And that's going to, that's helping. So one of the things that the Rise of Privacy Tech does is pair advisors to startups. And so that's how I think about half of the startups I'm working with right now came through direct referrals and then conversations I've had through the Rise of Privacy Tech. For others, it's been, hey, tell you about when it worked out that way. I'm also recently become an advisor for Taskbar, Taskbar.io on Hedera as well. And they're not privacy tech per se. They're building the gig economy, right? But a decentralized gig economy. But I'm having a good time working on, ethical tech issues, also with my DLT and Hedera knowledge, and bringing that to the conversations as well. So I don't really have a good answer for you because I didn't build Principled with the plan to scale it. I built it with a way for me to do fun projects right now that make me happy, because for so long I felt like I was put in boxes by the job roles I was given. And now this is letting me do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and adding value without feeling confined and restricted and not given a voice or a team or the money to actually accomplish the goals that the company.
So Principle is it's a solo gig, right? It's just you. There's no one else.
Yeah, it's just me. Just me
and the doggy.
I'm the only employee.
And your little doggy too, right?
And my little doggy too, Jameson, 11-month-old beagle ear.
Gotta have that. So are you doing anything on blockchain based? Because I know you said you're on Hedera. Any projects you're working on when it comes to blockchain and privacy? Because DLT and blockchain are completely different.
I mean, distributed blockchain is a DLT. It's just I say DLT to make it just broader and. But
well, when you're trying to make a comparison to Hedera.
When I'm trying to make a comparison to Hedera, I will say, instead of blockchain, I guess. But when I talk, I mean, that's the thing, right? We don't have, it's hard because even Hedera will refer to blockchains and them being part of it, because that's how the world talks about DLT.
That's how the world understands, but is Hedera a blockchain?
No, it's not. But
I know. When you get into the technicals of it, right. So my question to you is, are you working with any other project out there that is actually pure blockchain based, like Dogecoin?
Currently, no. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. I would, for me, privacy is the thing I'm trying to champion. So, but it does take a lot of work to better understand a new ecosystem. And so I guess I've just kind of I've been happy doing the stuff with Hedera. So the people who've reached out to me, either I've gotten them, there are 3 companies I'm working with now that I'm an advisor for that are asking for money from the HBAR Foundation, right? Like, so, and I'm helping them navigate that and having conversations with them around that. And so, adding another ecosystem in the mix as one person is probably not a great idea. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I just haven't yet, and that's why.
Do you know what Monero is?
I do.
Okay.
Conceptually, I know that Monero will obfuscate obfuscate between accounts, right? So
Yeah. So
obfuscate transaction data between accounts.
okay. What's your opinion on that? Because that's the way that works. And I made a transaction here and there to try to see how their blockchain works, and it's quite interesting because literally when you look at their ledger, there's no connection there. It's non-existent. You can't. Well, correction. Sorry, you can't trace. According to the public ledger, you can't track my address. It's non-existent on the ledger. You can see that the transaction, like say for example, I sent 100 Monero there. You can see that there has been a recent transaction of 100 that's been sent out to this address, but nobody actually knows where these addresses are or who they go to, who they belong to. They're just random.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it solves that problem, right? I mean, I guess the question for me is like, I mean, I support that people want to have a cash-like anonymity bearer instrument type of thing. Like if I pay in cash with something, the whole point is to not have that recorded somewhere, right? So I get why Monero would be an equivalent to that cash-like experience where you don't have to have your identity tied to it. And I think that for the right use cases makes a lot of sense. I think that's great. It doesn't mean that I all of a sudden think all future of money needs to like revert to the kind of the feeling of cash where nothing's ever transacted or recorded, right? Like and permanently and tied back to an identity. I am a huge believer in KYC, right? I'm not, but not for all situations, but for most. Like I've seen all the cybercrime that happens at Visa without KYC. I see like.
Have you received backlash about KYC yet?
I haven't been as vocal about that in many places. I think this is probably the most vocal.
You did mention this one time, one of your interviews before. I did hear you say have a discussion about you briefly mentioned the KYC, and that's a good thing that you brought that up because I completely forgot. What's your viewpoint on big tech companies doing KYC on obviously customers? It's a good thing in a way, but when you have something like Facebook that's saying, hey, we want you to provide your telephone, your physical address, and maybe I guess if you're doing some type of real world transactions, because they're coming out with their own crypto coin that you can start doing real world transactions. Most likely they're going to ask for your driver's license or your birth certificate or your social security, stuff like that. KYC, you need to have that kind of stuff on there. But when you have a company as big as Facebook asking for this type of data, that kind of gets really sketch, knowing that they've already had issues in the past on multiple occasions.
Agreed. Yeah. So first of all, KYC is usually done by a third party for that kind of third, for that very that trust issue that you're kind of suggesting. I mean, even Join Social, you interview, he's gonna, have verified accounts as well. I mean, because this helps stop the spread of bots, disinformation bots, and things like. I mean, there's certain things that I actually think like they're not done for control. They're done honestly for a safety purpose. And then the question is, how do we tweak those controls so we're not overly censoring or underly protecting? And I don't have all the answers, right? But I don't think it's as binary as KYC is evil and like everything.
So yeah, exactly. But it is a two-bladed sword for sure, right? It's like you are given this tool, and as a private company or a government, you actually do have the ultimate decision on what you want to do with this type of, service, this product, this KYC that you're collecting from all these citizens or customers around the globe. It's a very touchy subject.
It is, and I think, and I haven't given this as much thought as I'd like to. I really do want to think about this problem because, like I said, like there's so many of these meaty problems, right? I think there's going to be innovation that'll make it. I mean, KYC is a bear to do. I mean, it's just so hard because you're having humans verify this right now. I'm not sure if you could do it without having humans verify it in an ethical way. I don't know.
Actually, there is. I think there was. I was reading an article earlier today. I believe it was provide your thumbprint, and the algorithm automatically detects who it belongs to. So I don't know where they're getting this information from.
Is it India based and they got it from Adhar? Or?
I gotta find that article, but it came out today. I gotta look into it. Or maybe it was facial detection. One of the maybe facial detect. Oh no, what it was provide a photo of your pupil, your eye, right? your eye, and then they will give you $100 in crypto, in their crypto token, which is probably going to be worth like 10 cents at the end of the day, right?
So they're doing that with the promise of what? That you can now use your eye print as
no,
or are they giving you $100
there is
steal
nothing,
your picture of your eye?
That's
and
all
use
they want. They just want that picture of your eye, and they'll give you $100 in tokens.
Right.
They're not telling you they're going to do anything with it, what they're going to do with it. They're not going to say that.
Well, that's shady as hell.
right. But that's kind of like that's what's going on out there right now, right?
I know. There's a lot of weird things out there.
Give me your thumbprint. Give me your DNA, right? It's crazy. We're living in a crazy, crazy world right now. And artificial intelligence is pretty advanced. That's another thing. I wish we got a little deeper into that, but I think we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot less to say about AI anyway, because it's not my exact wheelhouse. There's a lot of overlapping issues, and I have opinions, but it's okay. If there was one that we didn't get into, it's probably the best one.
The robots are going to take over. They're going to be copycats of you. You guys, Jake, Mike, do you guys have any other questions before we wrap this up?
No, this was pretty great.
This is actually quite informative. It was actually the banter between you and Deborah, so really very cohesive. I appreciate it a lot.
I'm glad.
It's good to hear someone quite so knowledgeable about privacy in particular, and even more so, just someone who has a deep love of and good perspective on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm just glad that people care about talking about this in the new formation of for Web3, right? Like that the Web3 protocol makers and the people working on the algorithms and the, all of that they care about privacy and security, right? And originally it was they cared about security because that wasn't really built into the original web protocols. And then it was much harder to bolt on privacy. But now, I feel like we're moving all together with the same goals. Even the people who I don't fully agree to and subscribe to their ideologies until all the times that we should do certain things, we're all moving the same way. We're demanding more power back to individuals. We want more accountability, more transparency, ethics, all of the same things. So I'm just glad that I finally, with my privacy desires, get to be in innovation conversations. I'm not told to go over there with the lawyers or go over there with the compliance folks, right? This is important stuff. It's foundational to what we're building. So I'm literally living my best life these days.
Awesome.
Mike, anything?
Excellent.
Nope.
Perfect. So with that said, Deborah, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
This was. I knew it was going to be this. I knew you were going to come in with all this energy. It was great, literally. I hope to have you back on the podcast.
Sure, let's do it
soon. Okay. So with that said, Deborah, how can the folks out there around the globe that's watching this podcast or listening to the podcast get in contact with you?
Sure. So if you want to get in contact with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much a privacy guru everywhere, whether it's Twitter, whether it's in Discord. That's kind of been my moniker since Gmail came out. So you could also email me at privacyguru@gmail. So that's easy.
Better than AOL, right?
It is better than AOL. I was not able to secure that back then. So
okay.
No, I didn't even try. I didn't even know about privacy choice. I wanted to be a veterinarian. So here you go.
So that's kind of interesting. Before we wrap this up, that you're actually everywhere, but yet you're providing privacy.
Oh, right. I am not a very private person. If anything, I'm a little bit of an oversharer, right?
Right.
I know. I don't quite get it myself. I think I'm a little bit of a voyeur, which is why I have an understanding of the things to look out for, right? I love watching people. I love social media. I love engaging with people, but we should all be free to not free. We should all be empowered to over our own selves and be able to tell our own stories and not have them told for us, right? And I feel like when people when they slurp data up about us and make inferences, surveil and are careless with their data, it's the opposite. So I don't know. I always think it's funny that I got into this. My own hero, like I said, identity, she too is we're two peas in a pod this way. We're oversharers, but how else do you get out the privacy
Right.
word
Exactly.
without.
Exactly. Once again, another shout out because you got cut off there to Michelle Dennity, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, my hero. She'll laugh when she sees that. Well, she'll smile.
Perfect.
Um,
Thank you,
but
Deborah.
it's been a pleasure to be here, and yeah, I mean, I'm not. There aren't that many Deborah Farbers out there, as opposed to like a John Smith.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. All right, Cryptonauts.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Until the next time, remember, actually, yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Yeah, let's go ahead, stack sets and huddle. Adios.